He wasn't just her husband. He was her quiet protector, her lifelong ally, the man who built their world brick by brick. So when she looked him in the eye and said, "You're overreacting," it was a moment, that's all. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He simply smiled and began dismantling everything she ever thought she owned. Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. Cameron Decker had always been the type of man who never needed a stage to lead. He was calm, reliable, the quiet center of every storm. Whether it was for his employees at the architecture firm he co-founded, or for his wife, Joanna, whom he loved more than his own comfort. They had met in college. She was witty, ambitious, magnetic. He was thoughtful, driven, patient. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was sacred. For 30 years, Cameron had built a life around their shared dreams. Vacations in Maine, a wraparound porch she once described in a drunken sketch, a backyard garden she never tended but always talked about. He'd done it all, not for the applause, but because he believed in them. That belief shattered on a Tuesday evening in October. He had returned early from client pitch in Denver. The flight landed ahead of schedule, and he skipped the car service, opting to surprise Joanna. The fall air in Chicago bit through his coat, but he smiled anyway, already picturing the way her face would light up when he walked through the front door with takeout from that Thai place she liked. But the door was unlocked, and the house was too quiet. He stepped in. His shoes echoed, and then he heard it. Faint murmurs, a low laugh, a hushed voice that wasn't hers. He paused at the base of the stairs, heart pounding. Then slowly, silently, he moved down the hall toward the sunroom. There she was, Joanna, in his sweatshirt, leaning over another man, whispering something that made both of them laugh like teenagers. Cameron didn't make a sound. He stood there for 6 full seconds, long enough for her to notice. When she did, she froze, then blinked once, then scoffed. "You're home early," she said, pulling the hem of the sweatshirt lower, like that would undo what he saw. Cameron didn't speak. His jaw tightened. His hand stayed calm. His mind was already calculating, not exploding. She rolled her eyes, like he was the one being unreasonable. "Look, Cam, it was nothing. Don't make this into some huge thing." That was it. Not even guilt. Not even an apology. Just a shrug and a tone that said, "You're overreacting." Cameron walked out. Not because he was defeated, because he needed the silence to think. He didn't slam the door. He didn't call anyone. He just drove. Through neighborhoods they used to house hunt in. Past the coffee shop where she once cried over their miscarriage. Past the library where he once waited 2 hours in the rain just to walk her home. And the whole time, one truth rang in his head like a drumbeat. She had let go. Of him. Of them. Of everything sacred. The next morning, Joanna acted as though nothing had happened. She made coffee. She asked about his pitch. She mentioned the neighbor's Halloween decorations like the night before it had been some awkward dream. He watched her. Every lie she'd ever told made sense now. The girls' weekends. The long phone calls in the pantry. The sudden coldness. The emotional distance masked by a professional smile. She had been drifting for years. And he had been anchoring a ghost. But Cameron wasn't going to scream. He wasn't going to beg. He was going to rewrite the ending. That day, he did 3 things. He scheduled a meeting with his lawyer. He opened a secure drive and began logging everything. Bank statements, texts, receipts, shared devices she never unlinked. He called someone he hadn't spoken to in years. Lucas Tran, an old friend from his military engineering days, turned cyber investigator. "I need everything," Cameron said. Lucas replied, "You'll have it." By nightfall, Cameron had a plan. And Joanna? She had no idea that the man she once saw as too soft had just become the sharpest weapon she'd ever face. For the next few weeks, Joanna floated through life as though nothing had shifted. She still hosted her book club, still posted pictures of her morning lattes with captions like, "Grateful for slow mornings," and still kissed Cameron goodbye with the same casual brush of lips she'd used for years. But Cameron wasn't asleep anymore. He studied her now, not with hurt, but with focus. The kind of focus he used to design earthquake-proof foundations in high-risk zones. He memorized patterns. She left for Pilates at 9:10 a.m. sharp. Grocery runs every Thursday. She always used the same burner number for calls she thought he didn't know about. She'd switched to cash for odd expenses. She was careful, but not careful enough. Thanks to Lucas, Cameron had her entire digital footprint mapped like a crime scene blueprint. Hidden messages, hotel receipts, even a second private email under a maiden name variation she hadn't used since college. The man she was seeing, Dominic Fields, was a mid-level marketing executive, divorced twice, and had been on dating apps the same week Joanna claimed she was at a yoga retreat. Cameron didn't flinch. He simply filed the information neatly in a folder labeled Deconstruction. Joanna, of course, noticed a shift. "You're quieter than usual," she said one morning, sliding into the breakfast nook with a too smooth tone. Cameron looked up from his laptop. "Work's been heavy. You're not mad about that night, are you?" she added, casually, like referencing a scratch car door. "I told you it wasn't anything. Just a lapse." He stared at her for a beat too long, then smiled. Of course. Water under the bridge. She actually looked relieved. But what she didn't know was that bridge she was standing on. He'd already set fire to both ends. Cameron's revenge wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be surgical. He began shifting assets, quietly moving accounts into separate trusts under his name. He disconnected her access to long-dormant investment funds. He rerouted passwords, changed deed details on the cabin in Michigan, the one she always bragged about owning with Cam, and the house, the one they built together. Technically, his, titled solely under his business for liability reasons. Something she never read the paperwork on. On the surface, he remained the same. He bought her the soy candles she liked. He joined her for Sunday brunch with their old couple friends. He even laughed when she showed him a meme she found on Pinterest. But every day, he was cutting a little more string. Every night, he backed up more data. Every week, he pulled another thread from the fabric of the life she thought was unshakable. One afternoon, Cameron visited a small law firm downtown, one he'd quietly retained months before. He handed over 2 folders. The divorce packet, the scandal file. "I want both ready, but I won't press the button yet," he said. Waiting for the perfect moment, the lawyer asked. Cameron nodded. "No, I'm waiting for her to think she's won." That moment came sooner than expected. Joanna began acting emboldened, bolder in her tone, looser with her remarks. She even suggested separate vacations, throwing in phrases like, "We've evolved into more of a partnership than a romance, haven't we?" Cameron smiled. "Maybe we have." She beamed. She believed she was regaining control. And in her mind, she had successfully reshaped the narrative. She was misunderstood. He was emotionally distant. They were just growing apart. She even began testing the waters socially, letting whispers slip about how she and Cameron were consciously uncoupling on friendly terms. But the truth? Cameron was preparing for total detachment. Legally, financially, socially, and emotionally. The final trigger came the night he overheard her on a call, laughing, flirtatious, telling Dominic that she could finally breathe again and that Cameron was never really passionate, just comfortable. That one word broke something in him. Comfortable. He had given her loyalty, devotion, protection, and she reduced it to comfort. It was time. That night, he wrote a letter. Not angry, not vengeful, just cold and clear. He didn't give it to her. He saved it for the day he'd need to leave it on the kitchen counter when everything came crashing down. The invitation came on a Tuesday. A sleek white envelope with gold trim, handwritten with Joanna's elegant loops. "Join us to celebrate 30 years of marriage, Cameron and Joanna." She planned it herself. A ballroom event, catered dinner, a live band, and over 80 guests. The announcement alone made her glow with satisfaction, like she'd won a silent war and was now parading the trophy. Cameron played along. He smiled, helped pick the menu, and even suggested the jazz trio for cocktail hour. In private, he forwarded all final confirmations to his lawyer. This would be her night. And also, her reckoning. Joanna spent the week obsessing over her outfit, talking to vendors, and telling anyone who'd listen how grateful she was for a husband who was so forgiving, so mature. Dominic? Long gone. She'd phase him out once she sensed Cameron had stopped fighting. In her mind, she had maintained her image, preserved the marriage, and regained balance. She had cheated, yes, but now she was back on track, respected again. Cameron had moved on, and she was safe. She had no idea how wrong she was. The night arrived. Guests filled the ballroom at the Lakeshore Club in Chicago. Joanna glided through the room in a backless champagne-colored gown, flashing smiles and cheek kisses. Cameron looked dashing in a tailored navy suit, calm and collected. Champagne flutes clinked. Photos were taken. Toast began. Joanna took the mic first. 30 years, she said with a breathless laugh. It hasn't always been perfect. What marriage is. But love is about forgiveness, growth, and knowing when to choose each other, again and again. People clapped. She turned to Cameron. And I'm grateful for a man who continues to choose me, every day. Cameron stood slowly, took the mic. He smiled at her. She smiled back. And then he began. 30 years, he echoed. And if you'll indulge me, I'd like to tell a short story. The room hushed. A story about trust, about betrayal, about the cost of silence. Joanna's smile faltered. Cameron pulled a small black folder from his inside jacket pocket. For those of you who've known us for years, you know I don't do drama. But tonight, I'm going to tell the truth. He opened the folder and calmly began reading. Emails, screenshots, date-stamped credit card charges, transcripts of flirtatious conversations, photos of Joanna entering a boutique hotel twice in 1 week, during times she told Cameron she was out with friends. He read slowly, clearly. The room was silent, stunned. Joanna's face turned ashen. Cameron, stop. But he kept going. No anger, no yelling, just facts. He paused only to say, You gave me 30 years, Joanna. I gave you everything, and you gave me comfort while chasing chaos. Then he turned to the guests and said, I wanted you all to know the truth, not for sympathy, not for drama, but because silence protects the wrong people. And then he ended with a simple line. This is not a celebration of 30 years. It's a farewell. He left the mic on the podium, walked straight past her, and out the ballroom doors. What followed was chaos. Joanna tried to salvage it, claimed it was a misunderstanding, said he had exaggerated, but the crowd had seen enough. Friends began slipping out quietly. Her best friend, Tessa, didn't say a word. Even the photographer packed up early. Back home, Cameron's plan unfolded like a perfectly timed sequence. The locks were changed, her digital access revoked. The joint accounts were emptied, his portion transferred long before. A moving company arrived the next morning with Joanna's box belongings. And on the kitchen counter, the letter. Joanna, you built this life with me, brick by brick. Then you chipped at its foundation behind closed doors. This isn't vengeance, it's closure. I gave you 3 decades. Now I'm giving myself the rest. Cameron. Joanna was officially removed from everything. Her name disappeared from the business, the deeds, the vacation properties. She had no prenup protection. Cameron's legal team had tied every knot she never noticed. Her attorney called it a surgical execution. Within 48 hours, she was out of the house, out of the business, and on the edge of social exile. But her fall wasn't just financial. It was spiritual, because when Cameron exposed her, he didn't scream. He simply held up the mirror, until even she couldn't recognize the woman staring back. Joanna Decker hadn't cried on the first night. She had stared blankly at the city skyline from a third-floor sublet she never imagined she'd live in. The mattress was lumpy. The heat didn't work properly. Her phone buzzed nonstop for the wrong reasons. Her book club removed her from the WhatsApp group. Her name was quietly taken off the school alumni board, and her stylist of 10 years no longer had openings. The power of social reputation was subtle but ruthless. No one said it directly, but everyone knew. She wasn't the victimized wife in some domestic tragedy. She was the one who broke a loyal man and expected praise for surviving it. And now, she was unforgiven. A week after the party, Joanna finally opened Cameron's letter again. She read it slowly this time. The phrasing struck her. You chipped at its foundation. The metaphor wasn't lost on her. She had married an architect, a man who understood how to build things that lasted. And in the end, it was her who tore it all down, one secret at a time. But what stung the most? He never raised his voice, never slandered her publicly. He simply left her standing in the mess she created. Meanwhile, Cameron was rebuilding, not with another woman, not with a vengeance tour. He returned to his life with intention. He started waking early, running along Lakeshore Drive. He joined a veteran-led mentorship program for at-risk youth. He reconnected with his brother in Washington and planned a road trip through Oregon with Ashley. Ashley, who had texted him the night of the party. "I've never been prouder of you. Mom, I don't even know who she is anymore." Cameron replied, "She's someone I loved, and someone I let go." Emotionally, he was healing, piece by piece, but he didn't ignore the grief. There were nights he still reached for her out of habit, days when he'd hear a song and remember their kitchen dances. A part of him would always remember who she used to be, but now it was just that memory, a museum piece in a room he no longer lived in. Joanna, on the other hand, was unraveling. She tried to make contact, emails, a voicemail, a long handwritten letter that smelled faintly of her favorite vanilla perfume. In it, she wrote, "I don't know why I did it. Maybe I felt invisible. Maybe I confused boredom with neglect. But I never stopped loving you." Cameron read it once, folded it, and slid it into a drawer labeled past. He didn't need to respond, because Joanna's life was already the reply. Her lover, Dominic, gone. He ghosted her the week after the party. A man who liked thrills, but not fallout. She had no career to fall back on. She had never needed one. No close friends left. They were Cameron's friends, and loyalty runs deeper than gossip. And worst of all, Ashley didn't return her calls. 3 months later, Joanna found herself in a therapist's office. "I used to think I had everything," she admitted, clutching a tissue. "But now I realize I had him. And that was everything." The therapist said nothing, just nodded, because some realizations come too late. Meanwhile, Cameron found himself in a woodshop on a snowy Saturday afternoon. Ashley had brought him an old bookshelf from her childhood room. "Think you can fix it?" He ran his hand across the splintered edge. "I don't fix. I rebuild." She smiled. "That's what you did with your life." That night, he sat by the fire with a mug of coffee and a dog-eared copy of East of Eden, a book Joanna once gifted him. He thought of her, not with hate, not with longing, but with acceptance. He had loved her. She had betrayed him, and he had given her the most complete answer a man like him could give. A life without him in it. Winter faded into spring. By now, most of the city had forgotten the elegant disaster that was Joanna Decker's public undoing. New scandals replaced old ones, and cocktail conversations moved on. But the people that mattered, those close to the Deckers for decades, they remembered. Not because of how it ended, but because of how Cameron ended it. No scenes, no vengeance. Just a man walking away with dignity and taking her power with him. Joanna had downsized again. A one-bedroom apartment in a dull beige complex near the interstate. She volunteered in nonprofit once a week, mostly for distraction. The woman who once chose scented candles based on season and mood now lit whatever was on clearance. But it wasn't the money she mourned. It was the respect. The self-image she had once curated so carefully shattered. Her old friends ghosted her. The new ones didn't trust her. Every room she walked into, she imagined whispers. Not always because they were there, but because that's what shame does. Her therapist had told her, "You can rebuild a life, but you can't erase what it cost." She understood that now. Cameron, on the other hand, had never been more grounded. He bought a small lakeside home an hour outside the city. Nothing extravagant, just peace. He spent his mornings in silence, coffee, NPR, handwritten notes on his novel in progress. Something he'd always wanted to write, but never had the time or freedom. Afternoons were spent teaching young men at the youth center how to use tools, not just to build furniture, but to build patience. He often said, "Everything stable starts with a strong foundation, and so do you." The kids called him Coach Cam. One Sunday in May, Ashley came by with her newborn son. She named him Matthew Cameron, after her father. She handed him over gently and whispered, "He'll grow up learning what strength really means." Cameron held his grandson and felt something shift inside him. Not closure, he already had that, but continuity, a reminder that healing didn't just stop the bleeding. It created new bloodlines. And then, one final echo came, a letter in a soft lavender envelope. No perfume this time, just 5 short lines. "Cameron, I saw a photo of Ashley and your grandson. He looks like you. I hope he grows up to be everything you are. J." No return address. No plea for forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. That was enough. He read it once, then fed it to the fire. Because some stories don't need to be archived. They need to be let go. That night, Cameron stood at the edge of the lake. The wind gentle, the trees still, and for the first time in 30 years, his soul was silent.